Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. The Afghan night was a suffocating blanket thick with dust and the scent of fear. My team, a tight-knit group of Special Forces operatives, moved like ghosts through the desolate landscape. Our night vision goggles painted the world in shades of green and black. We were deep in hostile territory, miles from any friendly lines, on a mission so classified it didn't officially exist. Eyes peeled, guys, I whispered into the comms, my voice barely audible above the wind. Intel suggests the targets are holed up in a village just ahead. We go in quiet, we go in fast, we get out clean. Roger that, Captain, Sergeant Miller replied, his voice steady and reassuring. Miller was my second in command, a seasoned veteran with nerves of steel and a dry sense of humor that had gotten us through more than a few tight spots. We moved like shadows, our footsteps barely disturbing the loose gravel underfoot. Years of training, of pushing ourselves to the limits, had honed us into a weapon, a precision instrument designed for one purpose: to complete the mission. I thought of Lauren, her face flashing in my mind's eye, her smile, her laugh, the way her eyes sparkled when she looked at me. She was my anchor, my reason for fighting, my everything. I'd promised her I'd come back, and I always kept my promise. Movement at 2 o'clock, whispered Jones, our sniper, his voice sharp and alert. 2 Tango armed and approaching. Neutralize them, I ordered, my voice cold and hard. There was no room for hesitation, no room for doubt. This was war, and in war you either kill or be killed. 2 muffled shots echoed through the night, the sound swallowed by the vast emptiness of the desert. The Tangos dropped, their bodies slumping to the ground, their weapons clattering against the rocks. Clean, Jones confirmed, his voice emotionless. We pressed on, our senses heightened, our adrenaline pumping. The village loomed ahead, a cluster of mud brick houses huddled together in the darkness. The target, a high-value insurgent leader, was believed to be hiding somewhere within. Remember the plan, I reminded the team. Alpha Team secures the perimeter, Bravo Team breaches the main house, Charlie Team provides overwatch. Any questions? Just one, Captain, Miller quipped. What's for dinner? I cracked a smile, a brief flicker of humor in the darkness. Goat stew, I replied, my voice dry. Extra spicy. The team chuckled, the tension momentarily broken. We were ready, trained, focused. We reached the outskirts of the village, the silence broken only by the sound of our own breathing. I signaled to Alpha Team and they fanned out, securing the perimeter. Their movements were swift, silent, deadly. Bravo Team, led by Miller, approached the main house, their weapons at the ready. The door creaked open, and they disappeared inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. Charlie Team, positioned on a nearby rooftop, scanned the surrounding area, their rifles trained on any potential threats. And then it happened. An explosion ripped through the night, the ground shaking beneath our feet. The main house erupted. Flames, debris raining down on us, shouts, screams, the staccato burst of gunfire filled the air. Ambush! I yelled, my voice barely audible above the chaos. Get to cover! Another explosion rocked the village, this one closer, the shock wave throwing me to the ground. I felt a searing pain in my side, a hot burning sensation that spread through my body. Captain's hit! Someone yelled, the voice panicked, distant. I tried to get up to regain my footing, but my legs wouldn't respond. I looked down and saw blood, a dark stain spreading across my uniform. I'd been hit badly. Get him out of here. Miller's voice crackled through the comms, his words urgent, desperate. I felt hands grabbing me, dragging me across the rough ground. The world spun, the sounds of battle fading in and out. I clung to consciousness, my vision blurring, my body failing. Hold on, Captain! Someone yelled, the voice close, familiar. We're going to get you out of this. But I knew it was too late. The darkness was closing in, the pain overwhelming me. I felt myself slipping away, my grip on reality weakening, and then everything went black. The crisp white envelope with the official military seal arrived on a Tuesday. Lauren's hands trembled as she opened it, the words blurring before her eyes. Deepest regrets, Captain Ethan Cole, missing in action, presumed killed in action. The world tilted. She sank into the plush armchair in their living room, the room they had decorated together, filled with memories of their life together. A life that was now over. Or was it? A strange mix of emotions surged through her. Grief, yes, shock, certainly. but also a flicker of something else, relief perhaps, and a sense of possibility. The tears came easily. She was good at this, at playing the grieving widow. The phone calls, the hushed conversations with Ethan's family, the condolences from friends and colleagues. She navigated them all with practiced grace, her voice trembling, her eyes red-rimmed. At the military memorial service, she was the picture of heartbroken elegance. Dressed in black, her face pale, her posture fragile. She accepted the condolences of the assembled officers, their words of praise for Ethan echoing in her ears. A true hero, a brave soldier, a good man. But behind the facade of grief, another story unfolded. A story of betrayal, of deceit, of lust. The clandestine meetings in dimly lit bars, the hurried text messages, the stolen kisses in the shadows. It had started with Matt, Ethan's best friend and fellow officer, who had been there for her, offering support, a shoulder to cry on during Ethan's long deployments. One night the lines blurred. The comfort turned to passion, the friendship to something more. The guilt was immediate, sharp, overwhelming, but it wasn't enough to stop them. Their affair was a whirlwind of stolen moments, hidden desires, and whispered promises. They knew it was wrong, that it was a betrayal of Ethan's trust, but they couldn't resist the pull, the forbidden thrill of it all. "He'll never know," Matt would whisper, his lips against her hair, his hands tracing the curves of her body. "He's so far away," she'd reply, her voice a mixture of guilt and desire. "He'll never suspect," but the guilt gnawed at her, a constant reminder of her betrayal. She'd push it down, bury it deep, but it always resurfaced, a dark shadow lurking in the corners of her mind. The news of Ethan's death had been liberating. The guilt, the fear of discovery, the constant need for secrecy, it all vanished, replaced by a sense of freedom and possibility. She mourned Ethan, of course. She shed tears, she attended the memorial service, she played the role of the grieving widow. But it was a performance, a carefully crafted facade to hide the truth, to protect her secret. And the secret was Matt. He was there for her, offering comfort, support, and love. The kind of love she hadn't felt with Ethan in years. A love that was passionate, consuming, all-encompassing. Within weeks of Ethan's death, they were inseparable, and 6 months later Matt proposed. She accepted, of course, without hesitation, without regret. As she planned her wedding, the dress, the flowers, the guest list, a flicker of guilt would occasionally surface, but she'd push it down, bury it deep, telling herself Ethan would want her to be happy. She was moving on, starting a new life with a new man. A man who loved her, a man who was there. And as she stood at the altar, her hand in Matt's, a radiant smile on her face, she told herself she deserved this happiness. She deserved to be loved, even if it meant betraying the memory of the man she had once loved. The engagement ring was a gaudy affair, a large emerald-cut diamond that screamed new beginnings and moving on. Lauren had accepted it with a tearful smile, Matt's eager embrace a stark contrast to the lingering ghost of Ethan's touch. It had been barely 6 months since the official notification of Ethan's death, but grief, it seemed, had a short shelf life in their circle. Or perhaps it was just easier to bury it beneath a whirlwind of wedding preparations. The wedding planning was a frenzy of activity. Lauren, with Matt by her side, threw herself into it with an almost manic energy. The venue, a sprawling estate overlooking the Potomac, was booked within weeks. The guest list, a who's who of military brass and Washington elite, was meticulously curated. The dress, a frothy confection of lace and silk, was rushed from Milan. Everything was happening so fast, a blur of decisions and deadlines. But beneath the surface, a disquieting undercurrent pulsed. Whispers followed Lauren and Matt, veiled glances and hushed conversations that spoke of impropriety, of indecent haste, of disrespect. "It's just too soon," Mrs. Peterson, the wife of a fellow officer, had murmured to Lauren at a luncheon. "Don't you think you should wait a little longer?" Lauren had bristled, her smile tightening. "Ethan would want me to be happy," she'd retorted, her voice a touch too sharp. "He wouldn't want me to grieve forever." But the whispers persisted, a nagging reminder of the nuance, the seamlessness of it all. Even Matt's mother, a woman of impeccable social graces, had raised an eyebrow at the speed of their engagement. "Darling," she'd said to Matt, her voice laced with concern, "are you sure this is wise? People will talk." Matt, blinded by his infatuation with Lauren, had dismissed his mother's concerns. "We love each other, Mom," he'd said, his voice firm and resolute. "That's all that matters." But did it? The wedding invitations were sent, the RSVPs poured in, and the date loomed closer. The excitement was palpable, the anticipation electric. But beneath it all, a sense of unease lingered, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. The wedding was more than just a celebration of love. It was a statement, a declaration of moving on, of starting anew, of erasing the past. And in their haste to embrace the future, Lauren and Matt were ignoring the ghost that haunted their present, the ghost of Ethan Cole. The first thing I remember is the pain, a searing, all-consuming agony that pulsed through every nerve ending, every shattered bone, every inch of my battered body. I was in a cell, a dank subterranean hole that reeked of mildew and fear. My hands were bound behind my back, my legs chained to the wall, my body a canvas of bruises, cuts, and burns. They came for me in the night, shadowy figures, their faces masked, their voices guttural and harsh. They wanted information, names, locations, mission objectives, the classified intel I carried in my head, the secrets that could compromise national security. They started with the physical torture. Beatings, waterboarding, electrocution. Each session pushed me closer to the edge, the pain threatening to overwhelm me, to break me. But I held on. I clung to the image of Lauren, her face a beacon in the darkness, her voice a whisper of strength. "I have to get back to her," I'd mutter through gritted teeth, my body convulsing with pain. "I have to survive." They escalated the torture. Sleep deprivation, sensory overload, psychological manipulation. They played on my fears, my doubts, my love for Lauren. "Your wife," one of them would hiss, his voice a venomous whisper in my ear. "She's moved on, forgotten. You found someone new." The words were like daggers twisting in my gut, fueling the doubt that gnawed at me. But I refused to believe them. Lauren wouldn't, she couldn't. Our love was unbreakable. They showed me photos, fabricated images of Lauren with another man. Their smiles mocking, their embrace intimate. The rage surged through me, a primal scream trapped in my throat. But I held on. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I wouldn't break. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. The torture continued, relentless and agonizing, but I adapted. I learned to compartmentalize the pain, to shut it out, to focus on survival. I developed a routine: mental exercises, meditation, visualization. I'd picture Lauren, her face, her smile, her touch. I'd replay memories of our life together. Our wedding day, our first home, our future. "I'm coming home, Lauren," I'd whisper to myself, my voice a ragged promise. Spy echo in the darkness. "I'm coming back to you." The hope, however faint, kept me going. It was the fuel that kept my spirit burning, the fire that refused to be extinguished. They tried to break me. They tried to make me betray my country, my team, my love, but they failed. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I wouldn't yield. I was a soldier, a warrior, a survivor, and I would endure for Lauren, for my country, for myself. The drone strike hit without warning. One minute I was huddled in the corner of my cell, the silence broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water seeping through the cracks in the wall. The next, the earth erupted. The walls shook, and the air filled with the deafening roar of explosions. Dust and debris rained down. The cell plunged into darkness. My chains rattled, the metal straining against the sudden movement. I could hear shouts, screams, the panic cries of my captors in a language I didn't understand, but the fear in their voices was universal. This was my chance. Adrenaline surged through me, a potent cocktail of fear and hope. I lunged at the chains, my muscles screaming in protest, my body a symphony of pain, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. This was my only chance, my only hope of freedom. The chain snapped, the metal groaning under the strain. I stumbled to my feet, my legs weak, my vision blurred, but I had to move. I had to escape. I crawled through the debris, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. The screams of my captors echoed through the compound, their panic fueling my own desperate hope. I reached the courtyard, the scene a chaotic tableau of fire and destruction. Bodies lay scattered across the ground, their limbs twisted, their faces contorted in agony. The drone strike had been devastating, but I couldn't dwell on the carnage. I had to keep moving. I had to survive. I spotted a guard, his back to me, his attention focused on the burning buildings. I lunged at him, my hands finding his throat, my fingers tightening with a strength born of desperation. He gurgled, his eyes widening in surprise, his body convulsing under my grip. I didn't hesitate. I didn't relent. I squeezed, the life draining from his eyes, his body going limp in my arms. I took his weapon, a battered AK-47, and his knife, a crude but deadly blade. I was armed now, dangerous, a predator unleashed. I moved through the compound, a ghost in the chaos, my senses heightened, my instincts honed by years of training. I took down 2 more guards, their surprise my weapon, their fear my ally. I reached the perimeter wall, the barbed wire glinting in the firelight. I scaled it, my hands raw, my muscles screaming, my body fueled by adrenaline and a desperate hope for freedom. I landed on the other side, the impact jarring my already battered body, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to keep moving. I had to escape. I ran, my lungs burning, my legs aching, my body a symphony of pain, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The mountains loomed ahead, a dark, forbidding silhouette against the night sky. My sanctuary, my escape. I reached the foothills. The terrain was rough, unforgiving, but I was a soldier, a survivor. I would endure. I climbed, my hands gripping the rocks, my feet finding purchase on the loose shale. The air grew thinner, the cold biting into my flesh, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The summit was my goal, my salvation. I reached the top. The world spread out before me, a vast expanse of mountains and valleys bathed in the pale moonlight. I had escaped. I was free, but my journey wasn't over, not yet. I had to get back to Lauren. I had to go home. The mountains were unforgiving. My body, already battered and broken, screamed in protest with every step. Dehydration gnawed at me, my throat parched, my lips cracked and bleeding. Hunger clawed at my insides, a constant gnawing reminder of my weakened state. I stumbled through the treacherous terrain, my movements slow, deliberate. Each step was a battle against exhaustion, against pain, against the gnawing doubt that threatened to consume me. I had to keep moving. I had to survive. Days blurred into nights, the cold biting into my flesh, the sun scorching my skin. I scavenged for food, berries, roots, anything to keep me alive. I drank from streams, the icy water, a temporary respite from the constant thirst. I thought of Lauren, her face, her smile, her touch. They were my fuel, my motivation, my reason for pushing on. I'm coming home, Lauren, I'd whisper to myself, my voice a raspy echo in the vast emptiness of the mountains. I'm coming back to you. The hope, however fragile, kept me going. It was the light at the end of the tunnel, the promise of a reunion, a homecoming, a future. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw it. A flicker of light in the distance, a beacon of civilization, a sign of rescue. I stumbled towards it, my body trembling, my vision blurring. As I got closer, I could hear the sounds of voices, of machinery, of life. I reached the outpost, a small cluster of tents and buildings, a symbol of Allied forces. I collapsed, my body giving out, my strength spent. They found me half dead, delirious, a shadow of the man I once was. They took me in, cleaned my wounds, fed me, gave me hope. The recovery was long, arduous. My body was broken, my spirit fragile, but I healed slowly, painfully, but I healed. I kept asking about Lauren, my voice filled with anticipation, with hope. They gave me vague answers, telling me she was waiting for me. But I could see the hesitation in their eyes, the unspoken truth that hung heavy in the air. When I was finally strong enough, they flew me back to the States. I was coming home to Lauren, to my life. The plane landed and I stepped out, my heart pounding with anticipation, with fear. I looked around, searching for her face, for her smile, for her welcome, but she wasn't there. A general approached me, his face grave, his eyes filled with pity. "Captain Cole," he said, his voice somber, "we need to talk." He led me to a quiet room, away from the noise, away from the celebration. He sat me down, his expression grim. "There's no easy way to say this, Captain," he began, his voice heavy with regret. "Your wife, Lauren, she's getting remarried." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air knocked from my lungs, the world tilting on its axis. "Remarried to who?" I asked. "Matt," the general said, his voice barely a whisper. "Matt Kingston, your best friend." The room spun, the blood drained from my face, my heart shattered. The hope, the fragile hope that had kept me alive, that had fueled my journey back, died in that moment. It was a crushing blow. A devastating realization that the world I had fought so hard to return to no longer existed. Lauren was gone. She had moved on. She had betrayed me, and the man she had betrayed me with was my best friend. The grand ballroom shimmered. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto the assembled guests. A who's who of Washington's elite. Military brass in their dress uniforms mingled with politicians, lobbyists, and socialites. The air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the murmur of polite conversation. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter echoed through the room, and a string quartet played a saccharine melody. It was a picture of perfect celebration, a perfect wedding. Lauren, a vision in ivory lace, stood at the altar, her smile radiant, her eyes shining with something. Happiness perhaps, or maybe it was just relief. Relief that the charade was almost complete, that the whispers and the doubts had finally been silenced. Matt, handsome and confident in his dress uniform, stood beside her, his hand clasped tightly in hers. He looked proud, triumphant, the best man marrying his best friend's widow. A touching story of love and loss and second chances, or so they thought. The minister, a portly man with a booming voice, began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved," he intoned, his words echoing through the hushed ballroom. "We are gathered here today." The words were rote, the phrases familiar, the ceremony a carefully choreographed performance. Lauren and Matt exchanged vows, their voices clear, their promises empty. The guests watched, their faces a mixture of admiration, envy, and unease. They'd all heard the whispers, the rumors of the hasty engagement, the whispers of impropriety, but they chose to ignore them, to embrace the narrative of love and loss, to celebrate the happy couple. The ceremony reached its climax. "By the power vested in me," the minister declared, his voice ringing with authority, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The room erupted in applause, the guests rising to their feet, their faces beaming with congratulations. Lauren and Matt exchanged a kiss, a long lingering embrace that was meant to symbolize their love, their commitment, their future. But their future was about to change. Just as the applause reached its peak, just as the champagne corks were about to pop, just as the celebration was about to begin, the doors to the ballroom slammed open. All eyes turned towards the entrance, a hush falling over the room. A figure stood silhouetted against the light, his face obscured by the shadows. He was tall, lean, his posture rigid, his presence unmistakable. He walked into the ballroom. His footsteps slow, deliberate, each step echoing through the stunned silence. He was dressed in a simple suit, his face etched with lines of hardship, his eyes haunted. The whisper started, a low murmur that spread through the room like wildfire. "It's him, he's alive, but how?" Matt's face paled, his grip on Lauren's hand tightening. Lauren's smile faltered, her eyes widening in fear. She recognized him. She knew Ethan Cole had returned. He walked towards the altar, his gaze fixed on Lauren, his expression unreadable. The room was silent, the only sound the click of his shoes on the polished floor. He stopped in front of them, his presence a palpable force, a dark cloud hanging over the joyous occasion. He looked at Lauren, his eyes cold, hard, unwavering. "You planned this wedding," he said, his voice low but carrying through the silent ballroom. "While I was being tortured, did you even hesitate?" The question hung in the air, a dagger aimed at Lauren's heart. The guests gasped, their faces a mixture of shock, disbelief, and judgment. Lauren's face drained of all color, her carefully crafted composure crumbling. Matt's grip on her hand loosened, his gaze shifting nervously between Ethan and the stunned guests. The celebration was over, the party ruined. The truth was about to be revealed. The silence in the ballroom was thick enough to choke on. Every eye was on me, on Lauren, on Matt. My gaze locked with Lauren's, and I saw the blood drain from her face, leaving her pale and trembling. Matt, the bastard, just stood there, his jaw slack, his eyes darting around like a cornered rat. "Ethan," Lauren whispered, her voice barely audible. It was the only word she managed to get out, a pathetic attempt to fill the suffocating silence. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept my eyes on her, letting the weight of my presence, the reality of my return sink in. The guests, the people who had come to celebrate her happiness, shifted uncomfortably, their whispers like a swarm of angry bees. "Surprised to see me?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. It wasn't a question, really more of a statement, an accusation. I thought you were. Lauren stammered, her voice cracking. Dead? I finished for her, the word hanging in the air like a gunshot. That's what you wanted everyone to believe, isn't it? The whispers intensified. Heads turned, glances exchanged. The carefully constructed facade of the grieving widow was crumbling, the truth seeping through the cracks. Matt finally found his voice, a weak, pathetic attempt to regain control. Ethan, man, we thought you were gone. Lauren was devastated. I cut him off, my voice laced with disgust. Devastated enough to jump into your bed? Devastated enough to plan this charade? The room erupted in gasps. The whispers turned to murmurs, the murmurs to outright accusations. The guests, the people who had come to celebrate Lauren's new beginning, were now staring at her with a mixture of pity, contempt, and judgment. Ethan, please. Lauren pleaded, her voice cracking, tears welling up in her eyes. You have to understand. Understand what, Lauren? I asked, my voice cold and hard. That you were already cheating on me before I left? That you married my best friend the moment you thought I was dead? The tears spilled over her carefully applied makeup, streaking down her face, but I felt no pity, no remorse, just rage. A cold, controlled rage that burned deep within me. You lied to me, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You betrayed me. You disgraced my memory. The guests were silent now, their eyes glued to the unfolding drama. They were witnesses to the downfall of Lauren Cole, the grieving widow, the woman who had captured the heart of a hero. They were seeing her for what she truly was. A liar, a cheat, a traitor. I took a step closer, my gaze unwavering. You weren't worth it, Lauren, I said, my voice filled with disgust. Not the pain, not the torture, not the sacrifice. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I opened it, revealing the wedding ring, the symbol of our vows, our love, our betrayal. I held it out to her, my hand steady, my gaze unwavering. Take it, I said, my voice cold and dismissive. It's yours. You earned it. She stared at the ring, her eyes wide with horror, her face contorted in a mask of shame. She didn't reach for it, she couldn't. I let the ring fall to the floor, the sound echoing through the silent ballroom. It was a final act of rejection, a symbolic severing of our ties, our past. I turned and walked away, leaving Lauren standing there, alone and defeated, a ghost in her own wedding. The murmurs followed me, the whispers of judgment, the condemnation of the crowd. But I didn't care. I had said my piece. I had exposed the truth, and now I was free. The hushed reverence of the congressional hearing room was a stark contrast to the chaos of the battlefield. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the rows of polished mahogany desks, and the faces of the assembled representatives, their expressions a mixture of solemnity and anticipation. I sat at the witness table, my uniform crisp, my medals gleaming under the harsh lights. My injuries had healed, the physical scars fading, but the memories remained vivid, painful, unforgettable. The chairman, a stern-faced man with a booming voice, called the hearing to order. Captain Ethan Cole, he announced, his voice echoing through the room. We welcome you. We thank you for your service, and we are here today to hear your story. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. I was here to testify, to reveal the truth about the mission that had gone wrong, the capture, the torture, the betrayal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I began, my voice steady and controlled. I am honored to be here today, and I am ready to tell my story. I began with the mission, the classified operation deep in enemy territory, the objective so sensitive it couldn't be revealed publicly. I spoke of the ambush, the chaos, the moment I was hit, the searing pain, the realization that I was being left behind. The room was silent, the only sound the scratching of pens on notepads, the whirring of cameras capturing the moment. I could feel their eyes on me, their attention focused, their curiosity piqued. I recounted the capture, the brutal interrogation, the physical and psychological torture I endured. I spoke of the pain, the fear, the determination to survive. They wanted information, I said, my voice hardening, names, locations, mission objectives, but I wouldn't break. I wouldn't betray my country. I wouldn't betray my team. The representatives leaned forward, their expressions a mixture of admiration and horror. They were hearing firsthand the cost of war, the sacrifices made by those who served, the price of freedom. I spoke of my escape, the drone strike, the chaos, the desperate fight for survival. I recounted the arduous journey through the mountains, the hunger, the thirst, the hope that kept me going. I thought of my wife, I said, my voice softening. Lauren was my reason for fighting, my reason for living. The room was silent again, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. I could see the empathy in their eyes, the understanding of the sacrifices made, the cost of love. I finished my testimony, my voice strong, my gaze unwavering. I had told my story, I had revealed the truth, and I had honored the memory of those who had fallen. The chairman thanked me, his voice filled with respect. The representatives rose to their feet, their applause echoing through the room, a tribute to my service, my sacrifice, my patriotism. The media was waiting outside, a throng of cameras and microphones eager to capture my reaction, my story. I faced them, my head held high, my expression resolute. I'm just glad to be home, I said, my voice firm, confident, and I'm grateful for the support of my country. The public's reaction was overwhelming. Letters poured in thanking me for my service, praising my courage, expressing their admiration. I became a symbol of resilience, of strength, of the American spirit. My story resonated with people. It touched their hearts, inspired their patriotism, and reminded them of the sacrifices made by those who served. I was a hero, a survivor, a patriot, and as I stood there, bathed in the spotlight, the cheers of the crowd echoing in my ears, I knew I had done my duty. I had honored my country, and I had earned my freedom. The ballroom glittered, a constellation of lights reflecting off the polished floors and the gleaming medals pinned to the chests of the assembled military personnel. It was the annual Army Special Forces Gala, a celebration of service, sacrifice, and the unwavering dedication of those who put their lives on the line for their country. I stood just inside the entrance, the flashing cameras a familiar if slightly annoying backdrop. My dress uniform felt comfortable, a symbol of my identity, my service, my belonging. But tonight I wasn't alone. Beside me stood Dr. Sarah Walker, a brilliant astrophysicist, a woman, and of substance and intellect, a woman who saw me not just as a hero but as Ethan. We'd met at a veteran support group. She'd been volunteering her time, offering her expertise in stress management and trauma recovery. We'd connected over shared interests, a dry sense of humor, and a mutual respect for science and each other. Sarah wasn't intimidated by my past. She didn't treat me with pity or awe. She saw the scars, both visible and invisible, but she also saw the man beneath them. She respected my service, valued my sacrifice, and admired my resilience. And she challenged me. She questioned my assumptions, debated my opinions, and pushed me to grow. Nervous, she asked, her voice soft, her hand resting lightly on my arm. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. Not really, I replied. Just ready to get this over with. She chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that made me feel at ease. Don't worry, she said. I'll protect you from the overzealous admirers. I laughed, a genuine laugh that I hadn't felt in a long time. I think I can handle them, I said, my voice teasing. We walked into the ballroom, the noise and the lights momentarily overwhelming, but Sarah was by my side, her presence a calming influence, her support unwavering. We were greeted by a flurry of handshakes, congratulations, and words of appreciation. Thank you for your service, Captain, they'd say, their voices filled with respect. You're an inspiration. I'd simply nod, offer a polite smile, and move on. I wasn't comfortable with the hero worship. I was just a soldier, a man who had done his duty. Sarah, however, handled the attention with grace and poise. She'd engage in polite conversation, deflect the more intrusive questions, and steer the focus back to the purpose of the gala, honoring the sacrifices of the men and women who served. We mingled with the other guests, sharing stories, laughing, and enjoying the camaraderie of fellow veterans. It was a different atmosphere than the galas I'd attended with Lauren. There was no pretense, no hidden agendas, no jockeying for position, just respect and a shared understanding of the burdens and the blessings of service. Sarah and I found a quiet corner away from the noise and the crowds. We talked about everything and nothing. Science, politics, our shared love of old movies, our hopes for the future. She was intelligent, witty, and genuine. She was everything Lauren wasn't. You know, she said, her voice thoughtful. You're more than just a soldier, Ethan. You're a survivor, a warrior, and a remarkable man. I looked at her, my heart swelling with affection. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, my voice sincere. "That means a lot." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "You're welcome," she replied. "You deserve it." We stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable, the connection palpable. I felt a sense of peace, a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in years. Sarah respected me. She valued me. She saw me for who I was, not just for what I had done, and that meant everything. The music swelled, a familiar melody that tugged at something deep within me. The ballroom shimmered, the lights dancing off the polished floors and the glittering gowns. It was a beautiful scene, a celebration of resilience, of courage, of new beginnings. I stood with Sarah near the edge of the dance floor, watching the couples twirling to the music, their faces filled with joy, their laughter echoing through the room. I felt a sense of peace, a sense of completeness that I hadn't experienced in years. Sarah excused herself to speak with a group of scientists, leaving me alone for a moment. I watched the dancers, my mind drifting back to another time, another place, another life. And then I saw her, Lauren. She was standing near the bar alone, her expression haunted. She was dressed in a simple black dress, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors and elaborate designs that surrounded her. She looked out of place, forgotten. She watched me, her eyes pleading. I could see the regret in them, the realization of what she'd lost, the understanding that she'd made a terrible mistake. She started to move towards me, her steps hesitant, her posture uncertain. I knew what she wanted. An explanation, an apology, a second chance. I didn't give her the chance. I turned away, my gaze sweeping across the room, settling on Sarah. She was laughing with the scientists, her face radiant, her eyes sparkling with intelligence and humor. I walked towards her, my steps confident, my smile genuine. I reached her side, placing a hand gently on her arm. She turned to me, her smile widening, her eyes filled with affection. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice warm and concerned. I nodded. "Perfect," I replied, my gaze lingering on her, my heart swelling with gratitude. I raised my glass, a silent toast to Sarah, to my future, to happiness. She raised hers in return, our glasses clinking softly. I glanced back at Lauren. She was still watching me, her expression desperate. I didn't acknowledge her. I didn't even look at her. She was no longer relevant, no longer important. She was invisible. I turned back to Sarah, my smile unwavering. "Shall we dance?" I asked, my voice warm and inviting. She nodded, her eyes shining. "I'd love to," she replied. We walked onto the dance floor, the music enveloping us, the light swirling around us. We moved together, our bodies swaying in rhythm, our connection palpable. I didn't spare Lauren another glance. She didn't exist in my world anymore. She was a ghost from my past, a reminder of what I had overcome. The dance ended, the music fading, the applause echoing through the ballroom. Sarah and I walked off the dance floor hand in hand, our steps confident, our future bright. As we left the ballroom, I knew I had won completely, utterly, irrevocably. I had reclaimed my life, my honor, my happiness, and I had found someone who truly valued me. The final image as I walked out of the ballroom was of Lauren standing alone near the bar, her face etched with regret, her eyes filled with loss. She was a spectator in my life now, a reminder of the choices she had made, opportunities she had lost. As I stepped out into the night, I knew I would never look back.